Hello, and you're listening to episode 133 of Lifestyle Locker Radio with Dr. Loretta Breuning.
I always say we have two brains because we need both, and it's getting the two to work together that helps you feel good in the short run in ways that are also good for you in the long run.
Hi, I'm Dr. Josh Hant, and welcome to Lifestyle Locker Radio, where we help you create an awesome life and lifestyle. From nutrition to fitness, mindfulness to peak performance, and relationships to money mindset, we bring you on an amazing journey to help you unleash your human potential. Dr. Loretta Breuning is a founder of the Mammal Institute and Professor Emerita of Management at California State University, East Bay. She's author of the popular biohacking series that includes Habits of a Happy Brain, Retrain Your Brain to Boost Your Serotonin, Dopamine, Oxytocin, and endorphin levels, and The Science of Positivity. Stop negative thought patterns by changing your brain chemistry. As a teacher and mom, Dr. Breuning was disappointed by prevailing theories of human motivation. Then she learned about the brain chemistry we share with earlier mammals, and everything made sense. She began creating resources that have helped thousands of people manage their inner mammal. Her work has appeared in Forbes, NPR, Fox, Wall Street Journal, Psychology Today, Dr. Oz, Men's Health, Cosmopolitan, and numerous podcasts, including Lifestyle Locker Radio. It has been translated into Spanish, Russian, Chinese, Arabic, French, and Turkish. So here's our guest today, Dr. Loretta Breuning. All right, everyone, welcome back to Lifestyle Locker Radio. We have an amazing guest today. Loretta, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Loretta has a really neat company, which I loved once we started, stalking her, called the Mammal Institute. And she's going to actually talk about some pretty neat stuff, the way people's brains work and how to create happy and other things as well. So Loretta, let's hear a little bit of your background and your story, because I thought it's kind of neat to see people's journeys to where they've started and where they are now.
Sure. Well, I got interested in the brain chemicals that make us feel good later in life. First, I had a long career in academia. I taught management, and I was a little frustrated by the low level of motivation of my students and, frankly, my children and my colleagues' children. And what horrified me was that social science professors thought they created the rule book, of how the world should work. And yet our advice was not working in our own families, in our own classrooms. So I thought I needed to go back to the source. So what is the source? So I started reading animal studies, and I was very surprised that I would read one little mention here of these brain chemicals that motivate us and one little mention there, and no one had connected the dots. And when you do connect the dots, academics will critique it and say, oh, well, you can't conclude that. But I kept going, and I was fortunate to take early retirement and focus entirely on this.
Great. So your main focus now, and I saw that you're a docent in a zoo, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is so cool that you're studying animal behavior, being that we are all really animals. I mean, there is a primal part of our brain, the way it functions, and an advanced portion of it. So what did you start to figure out as you started to study more and more and figure out, like, oh, this is something that I need to go deeper into when studying these brain chemicals?
Well, first I'll explain it the fun way, and then I'll explain it a more theoretical way. So obviously animals don't have a refrigerator to go to. So when they're hungry, they have to find food. And that's really hard in the state of nature. And we have been misled by this idea that in the state of nature, everything is effortless and fun. That's what academia is selling, but it's not true. Animals invest tremendous effort, not only in finding food, but if they have enough food, to get a date, to put it, to any mating opportunity they get, they have to really work hard for it. And I learned a lot from wildlife videos, which are sort of telling the truth that academia is not telling. So the more slightly theoretical way is to say that the brain chemicals that make us feel good in animals, they are the signal that that's something that meets your needs and you should step towards it. And like, I want to do more of whatever triggers my happy chemicals. And in the state of nature, that gets me to do things that promote my genes and promote the survival of my genes. Anything that gives me a bad feeling is bad for the survival of my genes, and I want to pull away from it. So that's this core operating system that we've inherited.
So that's the story. What's the theory? Like, how do we bring that into reality for us?
So we have two brains, you could say. So one is the limbic system. People have heard of like the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus. These little structures are the same in all mammals, and they work together and they manage the positive and negative feelings. So they're the ones that turn on the signal that says, this is good for you, this is bad for you. The cortex that humans have, we think it's in charge, but it's not. The reason we think it's in charge is because it can use words. And the mammal brain, the limbic system, can't use words. So when you talk to yourself, it's all in your cortex, but it's not really running the show. But I always say we have two brains because we need both. And it's getting the two to work together that helps you feel good in the short run in ways that are also good for you in the long run.
Okay, so what are some examples of the how we can even, one, you actually go into some of the chemicals or go into the chemicals, the feel-good chemicals, and then can you go into just some examples of how life experiences and certain things we do will fire some of the maybe the right ones and maybe some of the wrong ones?
Okay, so we are all born with billions of neurons, but no connections between them. So the connections built from your past experience are what turn on the chemicals. So let's look at them one at a time. Dopamine is the feeling that you're just about to get a reward. So it's called joy or excitement. And many people like to think that they are so spiritual that they wouldn't care at all about rewards. But that's how the brain works. So if you are a monkey and you're hungry and you see a fruit in the distance and you say, oh, I can get that fruit. Dopamine is the feeling of, oh, that meets my needs and I can get it. So that's the excitement of, I can get something that meets my needs. When your belly is full, then it's more complicated to find ways to turn on your dopamine and have that feeling that you're meeting a need. And that's why we focus on social needs, and you might even say obsess over social needs.
Okay.
Now, the frustrating thing is, so when a monkey steps toward that piece of fruit, it gets more dopamine with each step. So each time you see yourself getting closer to something that meets your needs, you get more dopamine. But when the monkey is just having that fruit within its grasp, then it gets a big surge of dopamine and then it stops. So when you get what you seek, the good feeling stops, your body metabolizes it in a short time, and then you have to do something else to trigger more. And in the state of nature, that works because you don't have a refrigerator to go to and you have to keep looking for food. And like if a lion didn't hunt until it was dying of starvation, then it wouldn't have the energy that it would take to prevail. So dopamine makes you feel good for when you go for it in advance. And that's how we evolved. And so anyone who has that frustrating feeling of being on a treadmill, and I always want more, there's nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with society. That's the state of nature.
Okay. So and when I'm thinking of this, is this, so like when someone's thinking of like reaching a goal or a target, whether it's, a business goal or a weight loss goal or something like that's the hanging fruit.
Exactly.
In front of us.
So
Okay.
Goals make us feel good, but on the other hand, goals can also drive you crazy.
Yeah.
So that's why I have a moderate solution. So you all know, like the person who wants to be a rock star and then ends up embittered, let's say. So realistic goals have value, and like I always have a goal that I can accomplish by 10 a.m. so that that I
Yes.
always give myself a little bit of dopamine, you know? So if it's the end of the day and I'm tired and everything looks overwhelming, it's like, oh, I'll do that first thing in the morning. And now I already feel relaxed the night before, knowing that I'll attack it when I have more energy in the morning, and then by 10 a.m. I'll have a little bit of dopamine. So I call it short run goal, long run goal, and
Okay.
middle term goal, so that you can constantly shift among your goals, so that you're always stepping toward one fruit or another,
Mm.
even when you don't obviously have control over your progress.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Hitting small targets,
Yes.
if you will. Great. Great. All right. Next one. Let's hit the next one. So we had dopamine.
Okay, so let's do oxytocin. So some people have not heard of oxytocin, and other people are in the oxytocin fan club because it is it's called the love hormone, and each of them is triggered actually by a drug of abuse, let's say. So dopamine is cocaine, and oxytocin is ecstasy and also orgasm. And it's interestingly, it stimulates lactation and childbirth contractions in mothers, and it stimulates the egg laying muscle in reptiles. So, what do all these have in common? Well, it's reproduction is what our genes are focused on. We're not consciously thinking of reproduction per se, but natural selection builds a brain that rewards you with a good feeling when you do things that spread your genes, keep your
Mhm.
genes alive. So in the animal world, being with a herd or a troop keeps you alive, because when you leave the herd, you're easily eaten by a predator.
Of course.
So, oxytocin is the good feeling of social trust that you have. And being with the herd is the simple way of getting it. But animals really get on each other's nerves, which we can understand quite well. So, if you imagine that you're trying to eat grass and you're surrounded by all these other critters and their hoofs and their horns are poking you, and you'd rather just trot off to greener pasture. But if you do that, you're going to get eaten by a predator.
Mhm.
So when you leave the herd, your oxytocin falls, and that triggers a threatened feeling, and then you want to go back to the herd. But when you go back to the herd, then they get on your nerves. So
Mm.
you have this constant push and pull, and that's absolutely natural. There's nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with
Yep.
society. This is the job our brain evolved to do. And I have the same frustration myself. And then when I'm frustrated, I say, every gazelle can solve this problem, so I
Yep.
can solve it too.
Exactly. It's pretty interesting, and I'm thinking about this as a healthcare practitioner, as a chiropractor. When I go to conferences and I'm around my herd,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
very
yeah,
easy to, we get along and everybody's happy and we have fun and blah, blah, blah. And then we leave the herd. It's like, okay, something's missing now. Like, and that's why I think probably every industry, I work
yeah.
with only a handful of people. My wife is a speech pathologist and works with a group of teachers. So she's around a lot of people all the time, which is
Yeah,
really interesting, to see just the two dynamics between
yes,
me
yes,
and her,
yes,
the
yes,
amount of people that we hang around just based on our comfort
yes,
zones and the way we're used to
yes,
firing our hormones.
yes. And here's the amazing thing, though. The brain always focuses on the unmet need.
Mm,
So when you have the herd around all the time, you have a need for isolation because you just want some peace. And then when you're totally isolated, you want the herd. So you always want what you don't have. And again, nothing wrong with you, there's nothing wrong with society. Our brain prioritizes the unmet need, and it habituates to the rewards you have, and they don't feel rewarding anymore. So probably there was a time when you were had too much and were surrounded by people all the time, and you had a desire to work on your own. And
yeah.
so now that you've met that need for independence, now yeah, and you're taking the steps. And that's the whole point, is you go to these conferences, you take the steps, you feel good, and that's what everyone can do, is understand their needs, take the steps,
Yeah.
and understand that there are trade-offs.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I never thought of it as a neurochemical, that's what we're firing and wiring at the same time. It's
Yeah,
pretty neat.
yeah.
So we got oxytocin. Um,
Okay,
and
so the next one is the killer. Okay, this is the big one. So I have to say it fast, right? Okay, serotonin is the antidepressant is the drug example. And what I discovered about serotonin is actually not discussed at all today. But in the 80s, there was research. The competitiveness of animals has been understood by humans always,
mm,
because in the state of nature, people lived alongside wild animals and they saw how rather nasty
mm,
they can be to each other. Today, we're being sold the idea in academia that animals are empathetic and compassionate, and they are, like, a small percentage of the time, but most of the time, they will steal food from children. And when you're a young mammal, you learn that stronger individuals will steal your food if you don't assert yourself. And so serotonin rewards you with a good feeling when you assert yourself. And this is so uncomfortable in today's society that nobody talks about it, and it's sort of disappeared from academic view and from the news and everything. But it's so obvious to see that people obsess over the feeling of who is stronger than me and who is weaker than me. And when you feel 1% weaker than the individual next to you, that tells your mammal brain that the other guy will get the banana and you will starve to death and your genes will be wiped off the face of the earth. And that's why people obsess over minutia.
mm.
And if you have a good life and you have a full belly and you're safer than your ancestors have ever been, you can make yourself miserable over being 1% weaker than the guy next to you. And that's what the mammal brain does. And then people try to get you on their team and into your herd by making you paranoid about that. So it takes a lot of self-management to avoid letting yourself go down that path of misery. And the solution then, how can I stimulate my serotonin? I can remind myself of ways in which I am 1% stronger than the guy next to me. And that may sound rude and people may be horrified by that. Or they may say, but I'm not stronger and it's so unfair. This person has all these advantages. But that's just your brain going there. You can go to the stronger place instead. And when you do that and you enjoy that serotonin, then it's gone in a few minutes because your body metabolizes it, and then you got to do it again. So
Mm.
this is why life is hard.
It's interesting you said. I'm thinking that marketing uses messaging that triggers that make you feel so, I don't know, like number two, right? Like,
Inadequate.
yeah,
Yeah.
all this marketing. I mean, it's so popular here in the U.S. and one other country in the world. Even like they tell us our body's dumb and we can't heal and we need all of these drugs. And then do we really? I mean, and then it just plays on that hormone, right? That serotonin. It's crazy.
Exactly. But again, the bottom line is that if you feel like the drug industry is doing it to you or the weight loss industry is doing it to you, you're putting yourself in the
Yeah,
one down position. And the alternative way of looking at it is like, wow, I have the power to just ignore this. I am so lucky. In most of human history,
yeah,
people lived within a web of ideology that they really couldn't escape. And I can just escape it by just turning it off. It's like fabulous.
yeah. It's great. It's interesting though, and I think it's really pretty amazing that. I mean, I knew you were in management, and now we're in the neuroscience world, and I think that a lot of companies are now studying probably all of these neurochemicals so they can use it for their business marketing to give you the up, give you the down, give you the inadequate, and give you all of these pieces of the puzzle where they want to and where they need to. And it's obviously smart because they're going to play on the human condition, but it's pretty wild.
Yeah, but we're each responsible for managing our own brain. And
Exactly.
we would there's a natural urge to be protected.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's that urge, like, I want them to fix me. I want them to make me feel good.
Mm.
If you feel that way, then you're creating that rather than the company. And you have
Of
to,
course.
yeah.
You're
And
accepting it. You're
yeah.
accepting failure, if you will, and accepting that challenge. So we have dopamine, we have oxytocin, we have serotonin. What's the next?
So the next one is endorphin. And this is the one associated with runner's high. And many people have heard of it because it was the first one that was really researched. But it's really misunderstood. So runners don't get high every time they run. Um, endorphin is triggered by physical pain. So it's only if you run to the point of pain. And endorphin masks pain with a good feeling that humans perceive as euphoria. And we are not designed to have it all the time. So if you watch nature videos, which I really recommend, you see, like, if a zebra has a lion jumping on it and those claws and teeth are in its skin and the lion is hanging off, and yet the zebra is still able to run for its life with this lion hanging from its flesh. So that's because endorphin is triggered by physical pain, and it masks pain for 20 minutes. And after that, you feel pain, because pain is nature's signal that you need to protect your injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So in 20 minutes, the zebra is either dead or it's escaped. And so we are not evolved to be high on endorphin all the time. And the chemical of endorphin is it's opioid. It's morphine, heroin, codeine, and it is not designed to be on unless you're in physical pain. Fortunately, laughing stimulates a little bit and exercise stimulates a little bit. I hesitate to mention exercise because so many people become exercise addicts in that pursuit of this endorphin high, and they're not getting the other chemicals because that's like harder, and that's what they need to be doing. So that's why I'm always recommending laughing.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with laughing. That's for sure. Happiness is a fantastic thing. So with these four that you went over, is there one that we should have more than the other? Is it just a natural balance that we should have between all of them?
So what I recommend is that it is good to try to focus on the one that you think you might be missing. So, like, some people have trouble getting themselves in gear, which is a dopamine thing. Other people have trouble feeling their own strength, serotonin. Other people have trouble trusting, that's the oxytocin. But first, I talk a lot in my books about how you can build a new pathway. So first, the way we turn these on, we're wired by our early experience. Whatever stimulated your happy chemicals when you were young built the pathway that tells you to expect to get more in that particular way. And that doesn't always work because, doing the same thing over and over that you did when you were a kid is not necessarily going to work. So how can you build a new circuit? I help you design a new way and then repeat a new way enough to build a new circuit. And I recommend starting your first new circuit with the chemical that you feel like you're already good at, and then tackle a project with the chemical that you feel like you might be missing.
Start one with one that is actually easier. Makes a lot of sense. So I like the way you talk about the wiring, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the name a gentleman named Dr. Joe Dispenza, right, in meditation world. And he talks a lot about these neurons and these cells that wire together, and they build these pathways. So that's essentially what you are teaching, right? You're teaching people to maybe break old patterns or old pathways and create new ones. Very cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't focus on breaking old pathways. What the idea that I explain is they're always going to be there, but you can build a new pathway and you can build a new exit ramp from your old highway into your new little trail, so that the electricity in your brain instead of flowing automatically. So I'll explain a little. So the electricity in your brain flows like water in a storm. It goes wherever there's least resistance. And it's really hard to stop your electricity and then reroute it. So I explain this in a lot more detail in my books. Now, the way you have these big superhighways in your brain is because our peak neuroplasticity is before age 8 and during puberty. So that's when we built the pathways that tell us how to turn them on. And I explain that in my blogs and in my books.
So then are there particular hormones or particular things that we do that can be actually harmful to like creating these pathways, or just help us so we don't create any new ones?
So cortisol is the unhappy chemical, the stress chemical. Most people have heard of that. And when you focus on the bad, so it stimulates your cortisol, and then that activates your threat radar. And then your brain is very good at finding threat signals. Just like, let's say you're a gazelle, you smell a lion, you can't run until you know where the lion is. So once you detect a potential threat, you look around for threat signals. And if you live in that mode, you're always looking for threat signals and stimulating more cortisol and more threat signals and more cortisol. So that's unfortunate loop. And then I'll explain another unfortunate loop. So let's say I'm a teenager and I get a bad grade on a test. And then after that, someone invites me to a party. Then when I'm at the party, I forget about the bad feeling. So from my brain's perspective, the party solved the problem. It was like escaping the predator. So that builds a pathway in your brain, just like an animal that learns, oh, this is what you need to do to escape the bad feeling. Now, alternatively, if I got a bad grade on a test and then I went home and studied for the test, to study for the next time, that would build a pathway in my brain that says, oh, this is a problem and I know how to solve it. And then I would build a circuit for studying. So we have all been wired by our own unique history. And the more you know that your circuits were just created from random chance, the more you can sort of challenge them and redirect them and build new pathways. But once you go and study for the test instead of going to the party, it feels bad the first time. It doesn't feel like it's relieving the threat. So it's that willingness to do something that feels bad, which we all know this, but the more you understand why it feels bad, why it feels like a survival threat, the better you can pursue the new course that you've chosen.
And I absolutely love that you talk about how we're ultimately responsible for our feelings, and we can actually recreate the good and the bad. But and most of us don't even know that it's even a choice, right? We just feel victims, of our own emotions or our own neurochemicals. That's pretty wild. But it makes so much sense.
And nobody has an easy life. So my hobby, I read a lot of biographies, and I don't read new biographies because they're all based on the victim theory that's popular in academia now. But if you read older biographies of anyone who invented anything, tried anything, their life was awful. And when you understand how much crap they lived with, then you just realize how easy your life is today and how much effort went into anything that was ever accomplished.
Yeah, it is so true. I mean, like inventing a light bulb, thousands of times, right?
Yeah. I mean, even like the funny one, like the guy who invented the Hershey bar, his company went bankrupt 3 times before he got like a chocolate bar that stuck together. And before you could say, well, anyway, a Hershey bar is bad. That's terrible. But the idea is that before that, there was only hot chocolate. Nobody could get it to stick into a solid. And so every single thing around you that you take for granted was so complicated to create. And somebody invested tremendous effort, and most of those people didn't get recognition until after they died. And that's sort of my serotonin secret, is just tell yourself, you know what? You're going to get the recognition after you die, so just start enjoying it now.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I mean, I'm thinking you're talking about the chalkboard, and I'm thinking we're talking across the country right now on computers,
Yeah.
cameras, and
For
microphones.
free.
Yeah,
For free.
exactly. But how hard was it to create something? I mean, Hershey bar. Now we have this amazing thing. So
And
everybody,
people who created it are just criticized.
yeah, exactly. It's pretty wild. But I think this is really such an amazing conversation. And for those that want to learn more and dive deeper, I know you have a few books that I see on your website, but you also have books that are not I see directly on the main page here, right? And
Yeah.
different topics.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a lot of books.
Yeah. So your website is the main place, right? The Inner Mammal Institute.
My website, innermammalinstitute.org, and I have a free 5-day happy chemical jumpstart that will be offered to you there. It pops up, and if you dismiss it, then you'll find other places to sign up for it. And you'll get 1 email a day for 5 days explaining each of the chemicals and how to rewire them. And then my introductory book is Habits of a Happy Brain: Retrain Your Brain to Boost Your Serotonin, Dopamine, Oxytocin, and Endorphin Levels. And then I have a new book coming out called Tame Your Anxiety: Rewiring Yourself for Happiness. And then the book that we've been talking a lot about here, I have a book called The Science of Positivity. Stop Negative Thought Patterns by Retraining Your Brain Chemicals, something like that.
Yeah, changing your brain chemistry.
Yeah, by changing your brain chemistry. So, so we've been talking a lot about that positivity stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's super, super important. And I love that you're really sticking to your guns. And I mean, you've been all over the place. I mean, looking at the history of places you've been published and the people that have interviewed you is amazing. So I'm grateful to have you on this show. I'm really grateful to be able to share you with our community, because ultimately we are responsible for our health. We're responsible for all of the things that go into our and out of our mind. And I love that you are able to break this down in, I don't want to say a simple way, but a lot simpler than we've heard in the past. And you get to help people do things themselves too, which is very, very powerful and very empowering. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to let everybody know, we'll say this now, because it'll be in the show notes, that to find all of these details, or, to find her on social media, to find her everywhere, it'll be in the show notes, and it'll be at lifestylelocker.com/Inner Mammal Institute. And if you can't spell that, just scroll down and you'll be able to find it there. So Loretta, I want to thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I think our audience is going to absolutely fall in love with you, and expect book sales and people to be buying stuff off the shelves, so to say, because this is really an important piece of people's lives.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it for 2 reasons. One is, as I mentioned, I love body work myself, and I really need it. And the other reason is that my message is not especially accepted in the mainstream, because the romantic view of animals is more popular. And so the idea that conflict is natural is and that we're responsible for managing our conflict is, that's maybe the next big thing, hopefully.
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something, and I love having you, because you're a disruptor to the norm, and we love our disruptors here, and we know they're out to make big changes and do big things.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Hey everyone, I hope you did enjoy that episode with Dr. Loretta Breuning, right? How cool is she? She's going to help you release your inner mammal. And here at Lifestyle Locker, we say we love helping people unleash their human potential, and she's going to help you unleash your inner mammal. So head on over to lifestylelocker.com/inner mammal. Again, that's lifestylelocker.com/inner mammal. And you can also, for us, head over to iTunes if you're not listening there right now, and give us that 5-star review, not only for us, but for all of our guests. They deserve that 5-star review. And for those of you that have done it, I greatly appreciate it. And for those of you that are doing it now and will be doing it in the future, I appreciate you as well. And if you go ahead and write something nice and sweet, our guests love it. Other listeners will find us better that way as well. So no matter where you're listening, whenever you're listening, have a great day, evening, or night. All right, y'all. This is Dr. Josh Hant. Bye-bye.